Okay, BZ Watchdog. So, BZ Watchdog was alerted to the City of Hillsboro because of an interaction that someone he knew had with one of our police officers. This person is not a journalist. Journalists do fact checking for a lot of things. I don't really look at all this stuff, but from what I have seen, it is the vast majority of things listed as facts are not factually true.
So let's start with the criminal allegations, because this is where the stops becoming incompetence and starts looking something much better. After an apology letter was reportedly issued, a public record is a public record. It is not choose your own adventure novel where City Hall gets to decide what survives and what disappears. It's not a typo problem. That is potential tampering with evidence and tampering government records. And all of this happened under Megan Henderson's watch. So somebody explained why Roberta Skelton, Megan's own mother, is not only sitting on a board, but was serving as president of the library, or the CASAs. Is this a charter, just decoration now, or is this like the infrastructure?
5 seconds.
Ignored until it starts collapsing. After speaking of collapse, Megan hit me with an $842 bill for itemized Eclipseboro records. $842. It tells me one of two things. Either the spending was so bad they do not want the public seeing it, or they think taxpayers are stupid enough to give up and stop asking questions.
Tony, hey, where's this apology letter, man? I'm looking for it. Between Maria and Darrell, who mysteriously retired when I was looking for his personnel file. No comment. She told me months ago you could talk public affairs. You're not scared to go on the record. And I only what's that mean? Be careful.
Just be careful.
What's that mean?
That's it.
All the threats I've been getting, you tell me to be careful?
Oh no, I'm just
Tyranny, corruption, extortion.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
BZ Watchdog News Network.
Here we go again. Last night, April 7th, 2026, I showed up at the Hillsboro City Council meeting to address the council directly about the growing list of problems I've been exposing since March 4th. And let me tell you something, this mess did not get smaller, it got uglier. We are now talking about overcharging for public records, destruction and concealment of records, nepotism, and conflicts of interest that are clearly written in the city's own charter being violated yet again under City Manager Megan Henderson. Now remember, I was not able to attend the March 18th meeting where Megan apparently tried to smooth over the last charter violation I called out. But after last night, it is becoming painfully obvious that Megan Henderson is either completely clueless about the charter she is supposed to be following, or she is flat out lying to the public and hoping nobody bothers to read the documents for themselves. Because according to the charter and ordinance language, the council adopted those nepotism-related qualifications in 2021. They did not magically rewrite them to create some special little family loophole for the city manager and her mother. It is on their website, and it is in the ordinance system too. So the paperwork says one thing, Megan says another, and I will let y'all decide who sounds like they are doing damage control after getting caught. And this is the same city manager who's been tied to a pattern of covering up theft allegations in other departments, covering up sexual harassment issues, concealment of destruction of records, and now apparently overcharging me for records so the public and maybe even the city council do not get a clear look at what has really been going on in Hillsboro. Because let's be honest, transparency in Hillsboro seems to mean this: hide it, deny it, delay it, overcharge it, and then lie about it when somebody shows up with the receipts. And let's not forget Megan Henderson's story. I have said before that she was terminated in Mart, Texas for not being able to do the job. She tried to say I was wrong, but funny how she never produced a resignation letter to prove it. Strange how that works. Lots of talking, very little documentation. That seems to be a recurring theme with Megan. This is also the same Megan Henderson who lied to Mayor Scott Johnson during a city council meeting over the farmers market issue and lied to me and the public on a phone call about not intending to buy the Texas Theater and only wanting to lease it. And now look where we are. So the question is not whether Megan Henderson has a transparency problem. The question is, when do the lies stop? When does the city council stop pretending not to see it? When does the public stop ignoring it? And when do you bootlickers, family friends, and political cheerleaders finally stop treating documented facts like they are optional just because they do not like the person exposing them? Just because I speak my mind does not make me wrong. Just because some people do not like my tone does not erase the documents. And just because City Hall wishes I would shut up does not mean I'm going anywhere. Public servants are supposed to serve you, the people, not themselves, not their friends, not their family. And they sure as hell do not get to act like they are the rulers and you are the subjects. So before we get into this crazy video, smash that like button, drop a comment or two, share this everywhere, and subscribe to the channel. Because today, we're going to walk through the receipts, the contradictions, and the latest attempt by Hillsboro City Hall to explain away what is sitting right there in black and white. These are two citizens in Hillsboro that live on a street called Meadowlark. The mayor accidentally doxed their address, so I've actually muted it since the volume sucks anyways. They're addressing the fact that city manager Megan Henderson has promised to help and fix the issues they're having with the sewer, the water, and the plumbing. But after 6 months or so, they're upset. And so here they are addressing the city council, and then I'm coming up to speak afterwards. So I do apologize for no volume to be able to hear them, but I boosted the volume up 200%, and you still cannot hear what they were saying.
Thanks, Tom. Next individual, BZ Watchdog.
I'd just like to make a little request first before I start there. I've got this for about 3 minutes. I'm going to stick with the script tonight. Just in case I go a few seconds over, if you can just let me finish, I appreciate it. City of Hillsboro, sorry about that. City of Hillsboro, y'all have had long enough to fix this mess, and instead, under Megan Henderson, it looks like the mess got a promotion. So let's start with the criminal allegations, because this is where the stops becoming incompetence and starts looking something much uglier. I recently reported on the misuse of city funds and potential credit card theft involving Parks and Recreation Director Samantha Montes. While Tony Cain sat in leadership role and apparently thought the best management strategy was to look the other way. On top of that, there are serious questions about destroyed, concealed, or withheld public records, including records tied to sexual harassment allegations involving Darrell Mayberry and Maria Herrera, who resigned on February 28th of 2025. After an apology letter was reportedly issued, a public record is a public record. It is not choose your own adventure novel where City Hall gets to decide what survives and what disappears. Then on February 19, 2026, I requested Darrell's employment file. What happened? Delay, delay, delay. And right in the middle of that delay, Darrell mysteriously retires. Then I get hit with a $36 bill for 77 pages with only 10 redactions. How convenient. I told Megan Henderson I believed I was being overcharged, especially after I just exposed Samantha Montes the week before. And after I paid it, sure enough, the charges look inflated that I filed a cost complaint with the Attorney General's office. Funny how when the spotlight gets hot, the invoices start looking shady as well. And then there's the apology letter. I was told it existed. There is an email evidence that shows that it does exist, but somehow when it came to time to turn it over, it was nowhere to be found. That is not transparency, that is a cover-up with a clipboard. And this is not the first time. We saw the same kind of issue with Judge Nicole Crain's sign order back in December. The original version was reportedly misspelled, but when I asked for it, only the corrected version showed up. So the question is, where did the first one go? Destroyed, replaced, or backdated? Because if a government record disappeared and a cleaner version magically appeared later, that's not a typo problem. That is potential tampering with evidence and tampering government records. And all of this happened under Megan Henderson's watch. Now let's move to the smoke screen. The waste, the insult to taxpayers. The charter says no person should be employed by the city or serve on a board if they are related by blood or marriage with a prohibited degree. So somebody explained why Roberta Skelton, Megan's old mother, is not only sitting on a board, but was serving as president of the CASAS. Is this a charter just decoration now, or is this like the infrastructure?
5 seconds.
Ignored until it starts collapsing. After speaking of collapse, Megan hit me with an $842 bill for itemized Eclipseboro records. $842. It tells me one of two things. Either the spending was so bad they do not want the public seeing it, or they think taxpayers are stupid enough to give up and stop asking questions. I'm not giving up, and neither should the city. Then we get this insane property deal, trading a municipal building appraised around $239,000 for a gutted theater worth about $139,000. Before renovation development, I got this last paragraph here, that's it. This is setting taxpayer money on fire, calling it. So no, Megan Henderson, this is not Waco, and it never will be Waco. Hillsboro does not need a self-appointed midwife dragging the city through endless labor pains while the baby never gets delivered. If the midwife cannot do the job, then the council needs to find one it can. So once again, I'm calling on the city council to terminate Megan Henderson, demand a full investigation of these allegations, and refer any criminal findings to the proper authorities. Because the city does not belong to Megan Henderson, it belongs to the people. And the people are tired of the excuses, tired of the games, and tired of watching public trust get looted right in front of them. And Mayor, thank you very much for letting me go.
All right, moving along the consent agenda.
Because we are better together.
Better together, exactly. And it's important that it's an article of faith for us.
Mm-hmm.
It is a foundational principle that vision is the community's vision. I am the midwife.
Mm-hmm.
I am not the mama.
Mm-hmm.
The baby is not going to look like me. The baby is not going to have my eyes.
Okay.
My role is not to make it come out the way I would have it be. My role is to say push, breathe.
Yeah,
We can do this.
I like that.
And so the birthing is for that community, the next generation of who this community wants to be. And I've got to
Is what my role is. People periodically will ask me, what is your vision for Hillsboro? And while I have a lot of ideas, it is not my job to have a vision for Hillsboro. In fact, it is my job not to. My role is to be the midwife. I am not the mama. The baby is not going to look like me. My role is to stand by the side and say, push, come on, you can do it. We can do it. We can get there. The community has to give birth to its future self. It has to be the community's desires, values, dreams, preferences, the things that the people of this town want to do and to have and to
Okay,
be.
this item does require a public hearing, so we'll open it up to anyone in the audience that would like to address this specific agenda item.
If Rigo right here, if the municipality won't extend the sewer line or the water line, can the contractor pay for the extension of the sewer line? Because I know something there that they will not be extended, meaning that even if they could be extended, they would not. It doesn't have anything like some marks on there.
So this provision only applies if that doesn't need to be done. So if that would need to be done, then you would still need to go through the preliminary. Because that's one of the other things that the preliminary plat process does, is it shows where those utilities will be extended. So in that case, you would still go through the preliminary and final plat process, but this would be specific to areas that already have that infrastructure in place.
Yeah.
Appreciate the question. This item does require a public hearing. We'll open up to anyone in the audience that would like to address this specific agenda item.
Yeah, Rigo Reyes here once again. So which is the map that the U.S. federal government uses most all across the country? What is the map that they go based off of?
So right now, the minimum standard is the FEMA flood map.
The FEMA flood map. Okay, and that's the one that the federal government uses. The US government uses, right?
That's the minimum standard, and then communities have the ability to adopt higher standards. Some communities do adopt higher standards. There's examples of other communities that have adopted the best available data as well.
Now, what implication does this have on builders? Meaning, so they build a house on a FEMA flood zone, or outside of a FEMA flood zone, but when you incorporate these other ones, it expands, as evidenced by the super ditch properties, correct? What would be the extra steps that an individual would have to do in order to be able to build a property on those?
It's a really good question. It would incorporate the floodplain development permit process. You would need to get an engineer to look at that area to determine what elevations you're at and how that flood risk affects that property specifically. So it would incorporate that.
And
process.
currently, by the standard that we're going by the FEMA standard, we don't have to do that, right? If it doesn't land in a flood zone.
If it doesn't land in an area that shows up on FEMA's flood maps. Yeah. But just because an area doesn't show up on FEMA's flood maps does not mean that that area is not at risk of flood. So that's what this additional data from these additional sources of information come from, these other sources of technology come from.
If you could, do you know of any other cities, major metropolis areas that have incorporated better standard practices using the other ones?
I don't have any examples off the top of my head on other cities that have incorporated best available data, but yeah.
The federal government goes off FEMA, right?
That's the minimum standard. That doesn't mean that that's what communities have to hold to.
Okay, anyone else in the audience that would like to ask a question on this item?
Mayor, it just seems like there leaves an awful lot of speculation. And I can't say that you're using AI to generate something that we have no idea. The data that is pulling in, climate data, I'd throw half of the climate data they've come out with in the trash. It's dark. However, I didn't say that areas aren't prone.
And it's a very legitimate concern.
I don't mean to play God or anything, and I don't mean to trash legitimate science. I'm just saying that some of the data that's, you just double the area of what anybody's known to have floods. And you're imposing large engineering costs on those people who would like to build them in the town.
And it's a very legitimate concern, and I appreciate that concern. The idea is not to do that, but as I mentioned earlier, some of these areas that show up on Fathoms flood data are areas that we have experienced drainage issues in the past. And so by having this extra layer to help protect those areas.
Richard, would Mark Street not be a perfect example of that? That Mark Street flooding showed up on the additional basis where we experienced significant problems.
That's an excellent point. Exactly, yes, thank you.
And with the expanded, it allows homeowners to be able to get flood insurance so that if something happens, their losses will be covered. Whereas now, most of them, if it's not brought to their attention, never even apply for flood insurance.
If you build a property in a known flood zone, they're not going to insure your house. You can't get an FHA loan on it. Really hard to sell a house built in a flood zone.
You can get insurance, it's very costly.
It's a government pool of insurance. The government itself provides that coverage.
Yes, so for home builders who build houses and sell houses, they cannot get insurance to insure those houses once they sell them. So if a home builder sells a house, they usually sell it with like a 1-2-10 warranty or something like that. The home builder can't get insurance on it to sell the house. And then like she stated, I mean, it's very hard for an individual, it's very high, costs a lot more money.
The homeowner itself can't get that flood insurance.
No,
The developer gets builder's risk coverage.
Yes, but when the home builder goes to sell the house, he wants to sell the house with an insurance policy for the house, for foundation, material defects, anything that can go wrong with the house. So it's an additional layer of protection to the buyer.
That's correct.
And as she stated, it's very expensive for home buyers to provide actual flood insurance.
Flood insurance is very, very reasonable because it is a government
Well,
supply.
reasonable on price is subjective. What I could afford, you might not be able to afford. What he could afford, I might not be able to afford. It's subjective.
But again, that's the homeowner that has to buy that insurance.
I'm pretty sure that the people that lived on Mark would have loved to have known that they were in a high.
I completely 100% agree with you. We've lived in that area all our life, and we knew the houses were going to flood when they started building. We knew they were going to flood when they started building them. Them builders should not have built them houses over there.
Okay. Anyone else? Another question? Okay, thanks, Richard. We'll close the public hearing. Move on to the next agenda item.
Mayor, we had Council Member Robinson file a substantial of interest affidavit for this item.
It will come as a surprise to nobody that we have water line issues. So we've had the opportunity to apply for 2 different sources of funds in the last couple of months and then in a few months coming that were both really quick turnaround, and they require shovel-ready projects. So in order for a project to be shovel-ready, the engineering has to already be done. At the last council meeting, council approved, or actually it was 2 meetings ago, council approved MRE Group to be the engineering firm to produce design for us of water line replacements that we'll be seeking funding for from Texas Water Development Board. So that application is due in July. MRE Group proposes to do engineering for about $6 million of water line replacements in the next 3 or 4 months. So it's a very tight turnaround, and that's why we brought this back to council to approve because it's a significant budget expense. We will work with finance to prepare a budget amendment to reflect this and other changes. But this was unforeseen. The legislature made this funding available, and it is 100% grant funding, which means the city doesn't have to have a match. And by replacing lines that we've identified as being some of the leakiest lines in town, we can not only reduce interruptions to service, but we can also save, a fair amount of lost water. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But it's important. This is a heck of an opportunity, and we ask council's approval.
Council, any questions for Megan regarding this? Okay, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second?
Councilmember James?
Aye.
Councilmember Lloyd?
Aye.
Councilmember Richmond? Aye. Councilmember Jogga?
Okay, next item on the agenda here, deliberate on the city manager's report.
I'm not sure we have any new faces, but just in case, we have 8 strategic goals in our strategic plan. So at every council meeting, I report on half of those goals. The first half on the first council meeting every month, second half of the second council meeting every month. So these are strategic goals 1 through 4. The first one of those goals is to ensure responsible and equitable growth. One of the reasons that we've had concerns about growth and our ability to grow responsibly and equitably has to do with water supply. There's no real updates today in terms of raising the level of Lake Aquila or exploring use of part of the reallocated water from Lake Whitney. But I do want to talk a little bit about making better use of our existing water. Because we just finished and submitted our 2025 water loss audit, and it was just abysmal. According to our estimates, and this is
on data, it looks like we have lost in 2025 something like 423 million gallons of water. That is 57% of the water that we get treated from Eclipseboro water supply. And that's important because we pay retail for that water. It is expensive for them to treat that water and pipe it to us, and so we have to pay for all of that cost when we get that water. It's incredibly expensive. Doing something about this water loss is, the city's most important issue. So as noted, we have this $6 million request coming due in July. We already submitted a request for $10 million, and we've essentially gone through and categorized all of the different sections that comprise the biggest estimated volume. Now, we don't really know because it's all underground, but based on estimates from engineers and stuff, we think we've zeroed in on the leakiest sections in terms of their age and condition, and also the diameter of those pipes and how much pressure is coming through. So, little 4-inch line not losing a lot of water, 16-inch line, maybe we have a problem. So that is happening. In the meantime, while we're waiting to hear about whether those grant funds are successful, the city is moving forward with existing funds. So you may remember, a couple months ago, council approved hiring a company to go and basically just work on a daily basis. So we say, here's how much money we have, you just run until we run out of money, but we can't let any time go by where there's not work taking place. So that is happening, and at its last meeting, the Hillsboro Economic Development Corporation approved up to $450,000 to assist with eligible sections. The EDC's funds can only be used in ways that promote or assist the development of industrial jobs. So projects that benefit the industrial park or industrial users or potential future industrial development would be eligible for those dollars. The EDC has reviewed our list of potential projects and approved up to $450,000 for some of that eligible work. So that contractor that we've hired is getting ready to get started. They've looked at the first section, the EDC funded section, sort of starting at the industrial park and moving back behind the country club golf course and coming in towards that section of town, because that is a big diameter, high pressure line with not a lot of connections on it. So in terms of stuff that we can do with our own dollars, it's cheaper and also more effective because of the amount of water we estimate being lost. Interestingly, the contractor had said we can't get back there, it's too wet. And that wasn't after the rain. There's some concern whether that may be contributing to the firefly habitat, because it's just wet back there all the time. Which is bad news in terms of water that we've lost, but it's good news in terms of we think this is going to be impactful. We think we're going to be able to look at the numbers before and after this project and know that we made a difference, so that's exciting. Goal number 2. Goal number 2 is to foster transparency and connection. So we've talked a little bit about our software that's going to have a public-facing component that deals with the budget. Well, it's pretty sophisticated. So we honestly, it was smarter than we were last budget cycle, but we've asked the company to give us additional training so that we can use more of the features. Ideally, when it's done, we post the municipal budget on the website, but it doesn't give any explanation. And when you're looking at those numbers, it would be helpful to have a sheet next to you explaining what this department does, and how many staff this is paying for it, and all that kind of stuff. So this software will allow us to do that, but we've got to work our way around all the bells and whistles before it's fully effective. So we're going to be doing that through this year's budget process, and we're really hopeful that at the end, so when we have the budget up for adoption in September, that we'll be able to make that public and people will be able to see all that stuff. In addition, we continue to use use all these different media to share information regarding city initiatives. We're working through new technology options on recording and posting council meetings. Currently, we're sort of just using a phone. We have had conversations about some additional technology. Looking at something that's built into the room was just incredibly expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. We're looking at something a little bit more portable and frankly more affordable, but still effective. You know, kind of like the stuff that Mr. Zangari uses. So we've got some ideas on that, and we're working through that. And we're also updating our website as needed. Unfortunately, we do continue to catch things. For example, the website has information on being elected to city boards and commissions. It talks about the qualifications of those. It did not capture the fact that council in October of 2021 adopted a provision that allows relatives of city council members or the city manager to be appointed to boards and commissions if a waiver is sought from the city council. So someone could get the wrong impression fairly based on the information that's on our website, and that's going to be updated. Goal 4 is to deliver efficient and effective government. So we talked about the comprehensive planning process. Staff is in the middle of reviewing the downtown activation plan draft. Main Street Board meets next week, and we want them to have that plan in their hands. So we're working through kind of the last little details on that. The consultants are working really hard on the future land use maps and the capital improvements plan. So the capital improvements plan says, what do we need to do and what do we intend to do in terms of water line replacements, sewer line replacements, streets, that sort of thing. The future land use map says, where do we anticipate development happening? So we want those things to match so that we're not putting in a water line or replacing a leaky water line that's a 10-inch when, because new development is coming, it needs to be a 12-inch. So we want to be able to replace things one time and get it right. So that's why those layers of planning talk to each other. In human resources, we're hiring and interviewing for various open positions and working on some policy updates. And then, as council will remember, we hired a staff person to specifically do process improvement. So to walk alongside, starting in Public Works, our water line replacement folks, our street repair folks, and say, where are there things that we could be doing more efficiently? Where are there places where we're retracing our steps? Where are we? How could we be being even more efficient because we don't have any extra dollars? That staff person is looking into still and water and has looked into some technology for monitoring water use throughout the system. So these would be flow meters installed at various locations throughout the system that would monitor the water being used in each section, so that we could, in real time, say, oh wait, instead of waiting to see water someplace, we would say, oh, use is up over here, but it's not going into people's meters, so that would help us know, we've got an issue. And I skipped goal 3, but that's because Assistant City Manager Tony Cain is going to cover it. I will highlight, we've got new doors on the library, grant funded, congratulations. They look fantastic, and there will be a ribbon cutting for those on April 16th at 9:30 in the morning. And then later that same day, Hillsboro is having a summit on data centers. So lots of questions, what the heck with data centers. This will bring in people who can answer questions. Hillsboro is collecting questions from people all the way now up into a couple of days before the event, so that everybody can submit questions and make sure that those questions get answered during that meeting. And now I will kick it over to Tony to talk about some cool stuff. I'm so excited that we go on these directs. Yes, there we go.
What'd you do, turn on your body camera?
No.
Hey, where's where are all these secret personnel files over at the PD that I keep hearing about? All your write-ups. I know you got at least one write-up. How long have you been here? 14 years? And you don't have one single write-up in 14 years? You don't have a write-up in 14 years? Yeah, that's a cover-up. It's easy to get a policy violation. Not tying your shoes, policy violation. Tony, hey, where's this apology letter, man? I'm looking for it. Between Maria and Darrell, who mysteriously retired when I was looking for his personnel file. No comment. She told me months ago you could talk public affairs. You're not scared to go on the record. And what's that mean? Be careful.
Just be careful.
What's that mean?
That's it.
All the threats I've been getting, you tell me to be careful?
Oh no, I was just being nice.
Be safe is all right. But be careful comes a little differently. Woo! I gotta worry about driving home now?
So there you have it, folks. Another night in Hillsboro, another public meeting, and once again, the people get a front row seat to excuses, spin, and damage control dressed up like leadership. The meeting transcript shows my remarks calling out overcharging for records, missing or concealed public records, alleged nepotism tied to board service, and the broader pattern I say has unfolded under Megan Henderson's watch. It also captures Megan's own statement that the website did not capture the 2021 provision and that someone could get the wrong impression from what was posted online. And that is really the story here, isn't it? In Hillsboro, the public is apparently expected to believe that the documents are wrong, the website is wrong, the records are missing by accident, the invoices are somehow magically reasonable, and the people asking questions are the real problem. That is always the game. Hide it, deny it, delay it, overcharge it, and then clean it up with a speech once somebody shows up with the receipts. The transcript also reflects my statement that public servants are supposed to serve the people, not themselves, their friends, or their family. And let's talk about the midwife line for a second. Megan wants to paint herself as the gentle guide helping Hillsboro give birth to its future, but based on what the public keeps seeing, this does not look like a healthy delivery. It looks more like an endless labor, a bloated bill, missing paperwork, and a city government hoping nobody notices who keeps getting favored while taxpayers keep getting played. The transcript includes Megan describing her role as the midwife and not the mama, while my comments press the council to investigate and act. At the end of the day, this is bigger than one meeting. This is about whether the people of Hillsboro are going to keep tolerating selective transparency, convenient explanations, and public officials who suddenly become accountable only after they are exposed on camera. Because transparency is not supposed to mean we'll fix the website after we get caught. Accountability is not supposed to mean trust us, not the documents. And public service sure as hell is not supposed to look like a family and friends protection racket with a city seal on it. So to the city council, the question is how much more you need to see before you act. To the public, the question is how many more excuses are you willing to swallow before you demand better? And to Megan Henderson, if the records, the website, the charter language, and your own public statements keep colliding with each other, that is not a misunderstanding. That is a credibility crisis. The city belongs to the people of Hillsboro, not to the city manager, not to the insiders, and not to the bootlickers running interference every time the facts get uncomfortable. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. If you made it this far, smash that like button, drop me a comment, share this everywhere, and subscribe to BZ Watchdog News Network, because this story is not over, the receipts are still coming, and the people deserve the truth whether City Hall likes it or not. I'm BZ, and I'll see you in the next video.
Tyranny, corruption, extortion. Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
BZ Watchdog News Network. Watchdog.